For years, critical minerals sat quietly beneath the surface of the global economy. They powered technology, energy systems, and defense supply chains, yet remained largely invisible to the public. That has changed. Canada made a long-term, tens of billions commitment to secure its position in this space, methodical, deliberate, and early. Shortly after, Saudi Arabia announced a $100 billion push of its own. Was this coincidence, competition, or a signal that Canada had already moved the board? Welcome to Geocapitalist. Today's video, Canada's $80 billion critical mineral strategy, just triggered Saudi Arabia's $100 billion move, examines how long-term resource strategy, not short-term headlines, is reshaping the global economy. If you value evidence-based geopolitical analysis, subscribe to stay ahead of these shifts. Critical minerals are no longer niche inputs. They sit at the foundation of electric vehicles, renewable energy systems, advanced electronics, and modern defense platforms. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, and rare earth elements are now embedded in economic growth, national security, and technological competitiveness. This shift has changed how governments think about resources. Markets alone no longer determine outcomes. Supply chains have become strategic assets, vulnerable to disruption and geopolitical risk. When access to key materials tightens, entire industries feel the impact, from manufacturing and energy to financial markets. As a result, critical minerals are being treated less like commodities and more like strategic currency. Countries that secure them gain leverage, resilience, and influence. Those that do not face volatility, dependency, and uncertainty. This is the backdrop against which Canada and Saudi Arabia are acting. Their moves are not speculative. They are responses to a structural change in how the global economy functions and who gets to shape it. Canada's $80 billion figure does not refer to a single fund or announcement. It represents a multi-year build-out of an entire ecosystem. Federal policy commitments, provincial infrastructure investment, tax incentives, and private sector capital have converged around one objective: securing Canada's role in critical mineral supply chains. Canada's advantage begins with geology. It holds significant reserves of many minerals essential to clean energy and advanced manufacturing, but resources alone are not enough. What differentiates Canada is stability, political, regulatory, and financial. Investors price that stability into long-term projects. Over time, public policy has mobilized private capital at scale. Mining projects, processing facilities, battery supply chains, and supporting infrastructure have moved from planning to construction. The result is not a headline-grabbing announcement, but something more durable, a credible, investable pathway. Canada's strategy is quiet by design. It prioritizes predictability over speed, integration over spectacle. That approach matters when supply chains are expected to function for decades, not quarters. For years, the global minerals market followed a familiar pattern. Resources were extracted in one place, processed in another, and manufactured elsewhere. Over time, the highest margins and strategic leverage migrated downstream to refining, separation, and advanced manufacturing. Canada recognized this gap early. Extraction alone does not guarantee influence. Processing capacity determines who sets prices, controls timelines, and supplies end users. Without it, even resource-rich countries risk becoming price takers. Canada's response was not abrupt. It focused on incentives, partnerships, and alignment with allies to encourage domestic and allied processing. The goal was not self-sufficiency, but resilience. Where does vulnerability accumulate? Where can it be reduced? This reframing marks a shift in economic policy. Security and competitiveness now intersect. When countries address that intersection deliberately, they change expectations, not only for themselves, but for others watching closely. Saudi Arabia's $100 billion announcement did not emerge in isolation. It fits squarely within Vision 2030. a long-term effort to diversify the kingdom's economy beyond hydrocarbons and reduce exposure to volatile energy markets. Mining, processing, and industrial manufacturing are no longer secondary pillars in that plan. They are becoming core engines of economic transformation. Critical minerals offer scale, longevity, and strategic relevance that traditional diversification efforts often lacked. What distinguishes Saudi Arabia's approach is its deliberate focus on downstream control. Rather than competing directly with established mining jurisdictions on extraction, the kingdom is positioning itself as a global processing and refining hub. Rare earth separation, nickel refining, copper processing, and lithium conversion sit precisely where supply chains narrow and bargaining power increases. This is where pricing influence and industrial leverage tend to accumulate. State-backed financing accelerates execution. Infrastructure funding, concessional loans, and policy alignment compress timelines that elsewhere stretch for years. International partnerships further reduce technical and market risk. The objective is not dominance, but reliability, becoming a trusted, non-China alternative supplier for Western markets seeking secure, scalable inputs. Crucially, this is not a challenge to Canada's resource base. It is a strategic move toward the choke points of the system, the segments where control, not volume, ultimately shapes outcomes. Timing matters more than scale. Canada's strategy helped normalize the idea that critical minerals deserve sovereign-level attention, not just market-level interest. Once governments begin treating supply chains as strategic assets, the competitive landscape shifts. What was previously incremental, tax credits, pilot projects, isolated investments, becomes coordinated and long-term. Saudi Arabia's response reflects this change in perception. The size of the announcement is larger and the messaging more visible, but the sequence is critical. Canada moved first by embedding critical minerals into national policy frameworks, infrastructure planning, and capital mobilization. That early commitment signaled to other major players that this sector had crossed a strategic threshold. First movers do not always spend the most. They set expectations. They define seriousness. Canada's approach indicated that resilience, not just efficiency, would guide future investment decisions. Once that signal was clear, other states recalibrated their own strategies accordingly. From this perspective, Saudi Arabia's $100 billion move is not competitive escalation. It is strategic validation. It confirms that Canada's framing of critical minerals as a core pillar of the modern economy was not premature, but prescient. Canada and Saudi Arabia represent two distinct but increasingly influential models of strategic investment in critical minerals. Canada's approach is bottom-up and policy-anchored. Governments set frameworks, de-risk early stages, and allow private capital to scale projects over time. Risk is distributed across markets, institutions, and partners, which tends to slow execution but strengthens long-term credibility. This model aligns closely with allied economies that prioritize transparency, regulatory certainty, and financial discipline. Saudi Arabia's model is fundamentally different. It is top-down and state-directed. Capital is concentrated, decisions are centralized, and timelines are compressed. The government absorbs risk in exchange for speed, control, and rapid capacity build-out. This allows Saudi Arabia to move quickly into processing and refining segments that others struggle to finance at scale. Each model offers advantages. Speed matters when supply chains are constrained. Credibility matters when capital is patient and markets are volatile. For global buyers and manufacturers, these approaches provide complementary alternatives to concentrated supply. The key distinction lies in trust and integration. Canada's system is deeply embedded in North American and allied industrial networks. Saudi Arabia's model is building those links rapidly, but they remain newer and less tested. Neither approach replaces the other. Together, they are reshaping how the global minerals economy is organized. Canada's position in critical minerals remains strong, but strategic advantage is not static. The next phase requires sharper prioritization. Processing and refining capacity must continue to scale, not as isolated projects, but as integrated systems linked to power, transport, and end users. Without this, Canada risks exporting value instead of embedding it domestically. Long-term offtake agreements are equally important. Securing binding demand from allied manufacturers in the United States, Europe, Japan, and South Korea reduces revenue volatility and lowers financing costs. These agreements transform projects from speculative ventures into bankable infrastructure. Regulatory clarity also matters. Predictable permitting timelines, consistent standards, and coordinated federal-provincial frameworks reduce uncertainty without compromising oversight. This is not about weakening rules, but about making outcomes reliable. Most importantly, Canada benefits from focus. Rather than dispersing effort across dozens of parallel initiatives, flagship end-to-end supply chains create proof of capability at scale. Success in a limited number of corridors builds confidence across the entire ecosystem. The objective is not to outspend others, it is to remain indispensable within allied supply networks. What we are witnessing is not a minerals race in the traditional sense, but a structural reordering of the global economy. Governments are re-entering industrial strategy after decades of market-first assumptions. Economic policy, security planning, and international trade are no longer treated as separate domains. They are converging around resilience and control of critical inputs. Canada's $80 billion critical minerals strategy reflects this shift. It represents a recognition that long-term prosperity depends not only on access to resources, but on the ability to integrate them into trusted supply chains. Saudi Arabia's $100 billion move reinforces the same conclusion from a different starting point. Both acknowledge that supply security will shape competitiveness as much as cost. In this environment, leadership is measured by foresight and follow-through. Countries that move early can help define standards, norms, and expectations that others must adapt to later. Canada's strength lies in its ability to do this quietly, through credibility, integration, and consistency rather than spectacle. As the global economy adapts to new constraints and priorities, these early strategic decisions will compound over time. Their full impact will not be immediate, but it will be enduring. And there you have it, how Canada's $80 billion critical minerals strategy just triggered Saudi Arabia's $100 billion move. This was not a sudden escalation, but a revealing moment. Canada's long-term, ecosystem-driven approach helped signal that critical minerals are no longer peripheral. They are foundational to the global economy. Saudi Arabia's response confirms how quickly that reality is being absorbed. As supply chains, financial markets, and economic policy continue to converge, the countries that invest early will shape the rules others follow. Canada remains well-positioned, not because it is the loudest spender, but because it integrates stability, trust, and long-term strategy. If this kind of evidence-driven analysis of global economic shifts is valuable to you, watch our next video. It builds directly on what we explored today. Subscribe to Geocapitalist and share this with someone who still believes influence comes only from size. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.